Good afternoon, everyone. Good morning, and perhaps even good evening. Thank you so much for dropping by and joining me for another exciting episode of In the Studio with DAZ3D. Wonderful to see so many of you. Mr. Websaw, for example, and Mr. Hectix. I've also seen Changeling Chick in the audience. Alan Art, my basically, what do we call it? We call it the case buddy, essentially. We have the same workstation. Very cool. V3 Lion. My goodness, there's so many of you. Thank you so much for dropping by. I'm basically very open to suggestions of what we want to do today. I had planned on showing you how to make custom characters with the new Genesis 9 figure, but in so doing, that's also going to bring up a lot of other questions as to what's Genesis 9 all about, and some of the questions that I didn't get to answer in the big Genesis 9 reveal stream. So I'm very happy for you to just drop them in the chat, and we will go and fish them out so that we can answer them while we go on. My moderators today are, of course, Mr. Brian, aka Zero Calvin. There's also Mr. Dragonate, and there's also Miss Julia, who will be assisting me today with some exciting polls. So while we do all this, bringing up making our custom characters inside of DAZ Studio, I want to show you a little bit of a workflow. And I want you to make some decisions as to where do we want to go with the character. Like, do we want to make a man or a woman? And we'll start there. And then do we want to make them kind of shorter or taller? Do we want to make them slightly fuller or slightly thinner? And you get to decide. So we'll see how it goes. There's some interesting questions already in the chat there by Hectix and by 3D Loki. Will I also show stuff about ERC freezing and all that? That's a little bit of an in-depth topic that, in case you didn't know what that means in the chat, ERC freezing is this thing in which when you hammer and chisel away at a Genesis figure outside of DAZ Studio and you go and turn them into something completely different, could be humanoid, could be something very far away from humanoid, and then import that as a morph target into DAZ Studio so that you have a slider that dials up your shape on the Genesis figure. You have to kind of adjust the rigging and all that. This is an in-depth technique that I'm not going to be covering today. I'm going to be focusing on how to make custom characters with the morph dials that you'll be able to buy as add-on packages. So just as a reminder of how we did this in with the Genesis 8 and previous generation figures, we usually had the base figure, which was free, and then there's also products that are usually called something along the lines of head and body shapes. And then on top of that, there's also going to be custom characters available. And just so that we're all on the same page here, that we all know what this means, is all these products will essentially make dials available on the figure, that when you dial them up, your Genesis base figure changes into this other form. So like as an example, Michael 8 or Victoria 8, or in our new case now, Victoria 9, they're going to be a dial that will dial in a custom character onto the Genesis shape. So that's a custom character. But then there's a ton of other dials that are available as part of the head and body morphs, and those introduce many other sliders into your figure, and that lets you make things like, the fingers more lithe, or the face kind of slightly slimmer, and the body slightly taller, or make the figure more voluptuous or more portly or more stocky. And there's a ton of these sliders, and I don't think we've really covered them in depth, or how to deal with them. And this is what this stream is all about. So let's go. Let's get going and show you something that's happening on my screen. I hope it's the right thing. Some error messages are popping up. That's not what I had expected. Mr. Jeremy, how you doing? Are you still in the UK? Jeremy's usually from Singapore, but he's visited his mom in the UK, so don't know what time zone you're on right now. So what I'll be doing in a moment, once Dash Studio comes and finishes loading my scene here, I'll split my viewport into two viewports, and I'll have a look at the front in one viewport and at the side in another, and then we'll go through these things on the parameters tab. So I'll use the parameters tab, but you can also use the shapings tab. It's essentially the same dials broken out. And if you want to follow along with Genesis 8, you're more than welcome to do that. You don't have access to Genesis 9 just yet, but be assured it is coming at you very soon. So mid to late October is what I hear. I don't think we know an exact date yet, but watch out for those emails from DAS. And I'm hoping they're gonna let you have it as soon as. James Bond type male character with a new morph. Okay. It is Hectix, absolutely it is. Missing files, probably something uninstalled, something not quite here. I wanted to show you the render I made for this thumbnail here. That's not a good start, is it? Hey Biscuits, how you doing? There we go, that's cool. It's just one texture missing. That's fine. Okay, so I have used this scene, which is Stonemason's latest set, which is called Wonderland, and I have worked on this just so that I can put some other bits and pieces together. And I thought, hey, I'm going to go and show our characters in the just inside this set. So here's Victoria 9, and this is here my little robot here, and this is also the cat, because Stonemason's set is really inspired me, or it's what I feel like is inspired by the Stray game. I don't know if you've seen that, but it looks absolutely beautiful. Let me just go over here into iRay and just show you the scene, show you what he's done there. Wonderland it's called. It's a really nice set, and I'll go and wander around it just as soon as this is already here. Come on, let's do this. Yeah, so very inspired. It looks like the Stray set, and I thought, well, I'm going to go and put some of our characters in here. This is a little dark, and that's probably because I've dialed down the environment intensity a little bit. So let's make that a little brighter here. It's not really about the lighting. It's just about Stonemason's set. And my characters, I think they're over here, if I were to switch them on. But yeah, this is what it looks like, and it's really nice. It's a kind of a cyberpunk type scene that you can walk through and just be merry and have all these like exciting shots. Here, lighting, I should have really prepared that. I totally didn't. There's the Japanese and Chinese inspired things. So this is where it says Wonderland up here. Let's go close this down. Stonemason. Big shout out to Mr. Stonemason. If you haven't got the set already, then pick it up. It's really cool. His lighting looks much better than mine. Mine's really all about the this section here, where currently there's nothing there. And that's where my 3 custom characters are. Let me just go and switch them on. And then I show you what I've done there. So these are them, and I've rendered them independent from the background. So I've rendered the characters as well as the background, and then I composited that in Photoshop so I could balance out the lighting a little bit. This is, as soon as it comes out, this is the same figure. This is all Genesis 9, and it's just all kinds of different shapes that I've put on there. I should really just show you the render rather than the iRay preview here. Let's take the vignette out. That might look a little better. Yeah, let me just show you the render that I've made here. Yeah, let's go. I'll show you the render. So what I wanted to really show you is the workflow as and how did I put this together. So aside from the set, I've made each of these guys independently in their A pose and hammered and chiseled away at them until I was happy. And then I saved those out as a scene set, so just the character. And then I could apply a pose to that scene set as a character, save that out, and then just drag that into the scene. And I do this 3 times, and then I have 3 completely different characters. And this is the kind of process that we're going to go through today. And if you don't have Genesis 9, you can follow along with Genesis 8, but not all sliders will be available. So it'll be kind of an interesting workflow study, really. Let me go and switch this off, boot up a brand new scene, and then we can get started. While DAZ Studio is working on this, I might go and show you the elements of that render. So there is, oh yeah, this is one. This one I've made of the other 2 characters here, so in the same set. So that looks much nicer, much more moody. So I'll see what I want to turn this into. Maybe a little story about Victoria not having eyebrows yet or something. I'll see. So then we have this was the background here. That was that, completely blurry, doesn't really look like anything fancy, but the cool thing is if you bring that into Photoshop, you can make it brighter or darker, you can adjust the colors and all that. And then on top of that, we have the people. And these are just the people. This guy is also a character in the background, and then you just blend those things together, and that's kind of cool. So Genesis 9 builds on what Genesis 8 was, but adds so much more in regards to the sliders here. So if you wanted to follow me along, I have a completely empty scene. I have nothing in here, and I'm going to start with the regular gray character here. So in Genesis 8, that's just called the def load, I believe. In Genesis 9, we have 2. One def load doesn't have eyes or the mouth, and one has the eyes and the mouth. Like here, they'd otherwise be just empty holes. And that is important when you want to do something with the character, like sculpt on them. Usually when this was attached here, like the eyes and the mouth, they used to be there they are. They used to be attached to the inside of the figure. And this has changed because now when you morph this shape, you don't distort the eye, so they can be left intact. So that's a big plus. That's a big advantage. Also, the cool thing is that when you subdivide the figure, now we only really subdivide the outside of the figure where we want the additional polygons. We don't really want to subdivide the eyes or the teeth, especially when you go into things like subdivision level 3 or 4. You don't really want that. If this is too bright for you, I'm working in filament here. If this is too bright for you compared to what this looks in iRay, then go and create yourself a filament draw options node over here. Accept the defaults. That just comes in as a new node. And if you select that and head over to the parameters tab, then you can go onto the environments tab, and then you set down the environment intensity scale so that it looks pretty much like what the iRay render would look like with the same HDRI. Set this to something like 8,000, and then it doesn't quite burn out quite so much. I'm going to use the parameters tab, and I've put it in so that the whole list of morphs will be on the left-hand side. That's important because I think by default it's kind of down here where my face is, and it's a very small section in the default layout. And that's not really suitable for going through all the values that we're gonna need. So you can just go and drag these around. So I think by default, that is kind of here. And there's something else going on here. I think the scene tab's above it, and you only have this kind of space for the parameters tab. So just left click and drag that out and put that on the left-hand side. On the right-hand side, I have my scene tab open right now. I'll select Genesis 9 in the top here. I'm going to go and close this down so I have more screen real estate. Okay, now I'll go ahead and switch my viewport into like a side-by-side view, like so. And now I can go and adjust these independently from one another. You can use the orthographic views here, so you can have either a front view if you want here, and then you have a side view here in which you adjust things. That's how I like to work. You can also go and set up your own cameras for this. So if you're partial to a particular focal length, you can just go and create a camera from this and then set that focal length. We might do that on the second character, but for now, let's just go and get started here. So with the Genesis figure in the scene tab still selected, I now see it from the side and from the front, and here I'll be able to kind of move around. So what I like doing is start with the basic body shape first, and then we'll focus in on the details like the face and maybe the fingers and all that. But for now, we need to, first of all, we need to start deciding, and I think you're going to be a big part of the decision-making process. Are we going to make a woman or are we going to make a man? You let me know. Julia, if you could pop a poll out, that would be great, and then we can let the audience decide. It's a new feature we're testing out on YouTube today. Drew says woman. Of course. Mr. Chris is here. How's it going? The cool cat himself. Seb says a man for the change. So yeah, let's go and see what what the audience decide. If we get the polls working, let's see. While that's underway, let me just go and show you kind of basic details here about where we're going to go and delve into. So we have under the Genesis 9 figure, we have all these kinds of tabs here. We have a general tab, we have an actor tab, we have display, we have pose controls, we've got tools, and we've got utilities. So none of that has changed. This is the same as on all Genesis figure generations. So just that we're all on the same page here, all these things here, if you open them up, this will filter this list down. So if I go to the very top here, Genesis 9, I would see literally every slider that's available in the whole list. And that is, a lot of sliders. But that's difficult to find the one you want. So the best thing that you can do if you're looking for something specific and you're not entirely sure where that is, you can just go search for it up here. That's a search field. So if you're thinking, well, I want to rotate my character, but I don't exactly know where that is, just type in rotate or ROT will be fine. And everything that contains this string will be shown. So in my case, it's X rotate, Y rotate, and Z rotate. Those are the transforms. But then we also have things like asymmetry, nose rotate left and nose rotate right. So those are new Genesis 9 sliders. And once again, so the Genesis 9 figure is going to be for free. And then there'll be additional morph packages that you'll be able to buy that will contain these sliders. And in addition to that, there's going to be custom characters available, like Victoria 9, for example. So that's how to find a slider. But you can also go and whittle these menus down here. So sometimes when you're on something like, let's say on something like dark gray, and I search for rot here, and I'm thinking, hey, nothing comes up. I know Jay showed us, and there were like several things that are coming up. What's going on? The light things here, that's where search results are in. The orange one is where you're on, and the dark ones, they do not contain whatever's up here. So that's something good to keep in mind. I'll go and take this out here and go back to this list here in general here. So we have, under general, we have transforms. And if I click that, then essentially I only see these things here. So under general, I'd see them as well as a lot of other stuff. But then if I go and click on transforms, then I basically whittle my list down. It's called a filter, really. And transforms opens up. So there's also just the transforms, X, Y, Z translate. That's where the figure is in 3D space. Rotation is, what this is rotated as. Scaled is what it's scaled as. Then we have other things here, but those aren't really used. None of these are used for custom character creation. This is really used for moving the figure into the position in your scene that it needs to be. We want to make sure that is on 0 right now while we build our custom character. And then we can close general down and have a look at these other two things. There's actor and there's pose controls. There's also display. This has something to do with how your object appears in the scene. There's tools and utilities. We're not talking about that. We're going to have a look at actor and pose controls. So both of these contain a number of morph dials, and they're designed for two different aspects of working with your characters. So actor contains all the sliders that relate to how your character changes shape. But usually you set them up and you leave them as they are. And then your character maybe in a scene, and then he or she interacts with other people, with the scene, with props and all that. And that's where the pose controls come in. So pose controls, these are things like, move your arms around and move your head around, stuff like that. There's also things like torso changes, like on a per situation basis. But when we make our character, we don't usually touch the pose controls because they're kind of reserved to be overwritten on a per incident basis while you have your character in the scene. So we do most of our work here in the actor tab. An actor, if I open that up, is divided into many other subcategories. So much like before, if you click actor, you see this massive list of literally everything that's in here. Well, now we have arms and the back and the chest, and we have clothing adjusting. This is for particular items of clothing. We're not really talking about that. We've got the feet, full body, hands, head. So you can then go and make particular changes to these parts of your character. So for now, let's have a look under people and see what's there. So under people, you have another subcategory. I've got female and male, and then you have just, base up here. So this is a change that we can imply on the Genesis figure. We can turn the figure into a female. This is essentially, dialing this up is equivalent to loading in the Genesis 8 female. Well, now we have one unified figure, and we can turn this into a man or a female or a woman. So that's female, and that's the male. So that's a good starting point. But this is also the category where all your custom characters will live in. So like Victoria 9, for example. So you use the same body and you dial in as much or as little of whatever change you want with these morph dials. Oh my goodness, we have 134 votes. That is quite impressive. So currently in the lead is a woman with 62%. Okay, let's go and do that then. Let's go build ourselves a woman. Thank you so much for voting. I really appreciate that. What happens, Patrick? Good question. What happens if you have a man and a woman at 100% at the same time? Why don't we try it out? What do you think is going to happen? It's like you haven't done anything. So if I dial in the female and then I dial in the male, then I have the androgynous body again. It's as if nothing happens. So that's one thing to keep in mind as we deal with morph dials. It's the universe ends. Very good, very good. So what we want to keep in mind with all these dials that we're going to go through, you probably want to use complementary dials. So you don't want to make a person overweight with one slider and then make them emaciated with another slider, because that would work against one another. You want to use sliders that complement one another. So if you're sticking with like a thin athletic body, then go light on the body mass. Don't make him thin and then crank up the body mass, because those two morph targets would work against one another, and that's not going to look great. I'm going to dial out the male, leave the female, and this is, if you have a lot of character on Genesis 8 installed already, you'll find a lot of dials in here, and you can mix and match, you can blend character shapes into one another. So if I wanted to use not just my female or not just Victoria as an example, I could go ahead and use 50% of Victoria, and I can use 50% of the Genesis female, thereby creating a different shape. Or you can use more or less. So you can use the female and Victoria together, and thereby kind of accentuating her female figure. So almost looks like a manga figure now. So those kind of complement one another. So that's how you can blend your own characters together from the sliders you may have. Let's start with the base female and then keep going what else we can do with the body shape. So that's under people. But then if we close that down and if we go to full body, we see a whole other host of things that we can play with. Once again, long list. open that up and then have a look under base. Base is something that's meant to be used both on the male as well as the female body shape if you're using those in conjunction. But then we have some that are specifically designed for females and for males. So while you can dial in a body portly morph, a male morph on the female figure, you can do it. It's just not going to look all that great. So for that, you can see some of the proportions are just wrong. And so you're not really meant to do that. You can, of course, and you're free to do anything you like, but this isn't looking as nice as if I were to dial in the female designed shapes on the female base shape. So if I go over to the female one and I go use body pair figure, the proportions here are much more what a female body would look like rather than the male features, and vice versa. If you had a male figure there and you were to dial in some of the female full body morphs, they might not look great. But the good news is you can experiment and see whatever you like. Under base, then, we have morphs that work for either body shape or designed to be working with either body shape. So emaciated, that's when you haven't eaten a lot. Or there's fitness. This also dials up these other two morphs here as a controller. So there's fitness, and then we have fitness mass and fitness detail. But you can also go and dial those out. So if you want them to be kind of toned but not quite have as much body mass, you can go and, or muscle mass rather, you can go and dial that out. So you don't have to leave that like that. Body heavy, so that's probably designed to work maybe together with a pair figure if you have somebody who's heavy and has a pair figure, or who's heavy as well as voluptuous, so kind of keeps the body proportions there. Lithe, I think the funniest explanation of what lithe actually is if you're lithe, then you look good in a sweater. I think that's I thought that was quite funny. And then there's muscular. Yeah, look at that, bodybuilder. But you can use them all together. So you could say a little bit of muscularity. Don't dial them all up to 100%. That just creates a monster. But, blend them in. Like, maybe you have something like 40% muscularity, and then you also have fitness in here, like on top of one another. But if you now dial in emaciated, that's just not going to work. That's just two morph targets working against one another. So if you have a reference that you want to work from, that's also cool. Or just dial around and twiddle until you see something that you like. If you ever wanted to reset a slider, you can Alt left click on the slider. If you do that, it sets itself back to the default, which is usually 0. There's older body. This is kind of nice. So you now have an older body morph directly built into the figure. That's kind of cool. You see the muscle tissue sagging there. It's very cool. And it's this all comes with the base Genesis figure. This is what I find so amazing. This is thin. Thin is something other than emaciated. You can really see how you can go to town with that. This must have been a ton of work making all these sliders. Body mass, this is in the middle here. So you can set this to positive or negative. So you can also take away from the mass. The idea here is that if you had somebody who's emaciated already, and then you want to reduce something like the body mass, then you could, really go to town on extremes. And you can see how beautiful this works. It's not just on the face or just on the body. It's literally everywhere. So it's really, really cool. Yeah, hours and hours of fun. Very cool. Very cool. So that's kind of the basic body shape. But then these on the bottom here, the orange sliders, they're more interesting. And these are new in Genesis 9. And these are proportional height, proportion larger and proportion smaller. So the beauty about these sliders is that if you had a character and you wanted to make them taller, you wouldn't scale them up. What you wouldn't do is go under general and go over to scale and then just make the body larger or smaller, because this it doesn't change the proportions. So this is now not a child. This is the same basic female character at 50% size. So this is not a child. This is sometimes what goes wrong when you create characters and you want to change their height a little bit. If you head over to if you use these sliders, you'll see that some of the proportions are changing. So if you make them taller, you see that like the trunk and the legs change independently from one another. That is pretty neat. So this is still not a child, but it's, you know, it's proportionally making characters a little bit larger or smaller. Much like this one here, proportion larger. See what happens to the hips there? It doesn't increase the size of the head. I mean, it does, but marginally so. And same with smaller. This is kind of my favorite here. If you look at these body proportions, they're now like little person. If you think Topsy, this is exactly what those recent characters would look like. But now you've got this built in to the Genesis figure. So very, very cool. So then tell me, my friends, do we want to make, just as a rough guide, do we want to make a tall character or a small character or a medium-sized character? Because this is what we can now do. Tall character, small character, or medium-sized character. Majid, exactly, Hectix. Ainsley, absolutely. This is really cool, and I think on the larger proportions as well. If you wanted to make somebody like Shaq, then you would use this slider. I don't actually know what happens when you go to the very extreme, but there you got made your own giant. So I don't know what happens on the face here. I'm not sure if that's meant to happen. But this is now your giant character, essentially. So from giant to little person, it's built into the figure. So I think 200, even though you can dial it in, I'm not sure if that's meant to be used. I think it's just there as an exaggerational possibility. These are also, keep in mind, I'm working with a pre-release figure here. This is all currently finalized. So I think maybe 200 is probably, 100 is probably supposed to be the limit here. So use at your own peril, I think is the word I'm looking for. While Julia makes that poll again about, do we want to make a tall person, small person, or medium-sized person? Let's have a look what else is in here. So these are the full body sliders here. But once you've settled on that, there's also other things that you can do. Like you could go into the waist, and then you can play around with all these other sliders. So this would now not so much change the body in its entirety, but it would go and change things about the body that, whatever it says here along. So anything in the waist would be in this area here. So if you're looking for something there, here's the proportional torso length. This is a slider that would have been referenced in one of the earlier ones that we have had there. So you're probably not meant to play around with this, but if you want to do that, and if you're making an alien character or whatnot, go right ahead. Kind of cool. There's also other things here. So in the waist, we see things like the navel. If your character needs a belly button, you can see that here. If this list is too long or too confusing for you, just type in what you're looking for. So in case of belly button doesn't come up. So it's called the navel. So you search for navel as an example, and then you have all these navel options here: navel depth HD, navel hollow HD, a navel horizontal, navel out, navel size, navel vertical, and they all play with this. And this brings up another interesting thing that I wanted to bring to your attention before we carry on. Anything that mentions HD, that means it's a morph that works on a higher subdivision level than the character might currently be dialed into. So as a result, if you were to go and dial in, navel HD is already dialed in, but if you say navel depth HD and you zoom in really closely here, you can see that it almost looks like there's rough edges here. That doesn't look smooth on the outside, and is because our character currently is set to a lower subdivision resolution in the viewport than it is for the final render. If ever you needed to check that, head over to under parameters tab with your character selected on the mesh resolution. You can see this here, resolution level, you see something that usually says high resolution, but you can also set it to base resolution. And that now sets this to no subdivision in the viewport whatsoever. So as a result, we can, if we look really closely, we've seen even more exaggerated kind of diamond shape, and that's because the navel morph that I've just dialed up there is really only defined as a HD morph, so it kicks in at a higher subdivision level. So you can see here that this here, the view sub-D level, is kind of what we see. So currently we see nothing. Currently we're looking at the base resolution, but usually this is set to high resolution, and you can see how this changes here. And this is now subdivision level 1. So that's one level of subdivision. If I set this to 0, then we're essentially back at base resolution. So 1's usually in the viewport, but on the render, we're using 2 more levels of subdivision. And just to bring home what that means, that when you increase the level of subdivision by 1, you're essentially quadrupling the polygon count, and you imply more geometry than is actually there. And this is great to imply more detail. So you have something that looks a little bit edgy like this, but if you subdivide either face, then you have something that's approximating a curve more. And the more you do that, the higher the subdivision level will appear. So in my render, I see something better than here. But if I wanted to preview this in the viewport, I can increase this number, and it'll take your computer a little bit more time to calculate all these additional polygons. So I'll go and set this to 2. As a result, my render sub-D level now increases also, and you can see this is much smoother now compared to the previous one. That's that. But you can also set it to something even higher. So let me set this to 3. It takes my computer a little bit longer to work on this, and once it's set up, look at that, how beautiful that navel is. You can set the render sub-D level down again if you wanted to have that not at 5 because your computer might not be able to handle it. You can set that to 3. But if ever you see something that you want to preview in HD in the viewport, you need to increase this. So you might see something that you think, hey, that looks terrible, I don't want that on my figure. You need to set it to a higher subdivision level to basically be able to see that. As a result, though, and this is why I'm going on about this, if you do that, then be aware that sliding these things in and out might take your computer a little bit more time. So anything that your computer now has to work like 8 times harder than before. Mine's kind of doing it. It's kind of cool, but it's not as fluid anymore as it was before. Let me go back to navel and show you some of the other things. So there's navel hollow HD. Hollow navel, I like it. Navel horizontal HD. Different belly button shapes. Isn't that cool? It's just so rad, the stuff that you can do. You can have an outie, of course. Outie belly button. Is that cool or what? I love it. Once again, don't mix an outie with an innie. It's not going to really work. Navel size. If you needed to have a larger belly button, totally possible. Maybe a deep, large navel. Brian's already working on a product that's called Belly Button Fluff, by the way. And my favorite, navel vertical HD. How exciting. So if you think about this level of detail has been applied to the whole figure. So like the belly button is just one example, but you can literally see this attention to detail literally everywhere on the whole figure, which is why I absolutely love the Genesis 9 figure. There's just so much stuff you can play with there. Okay, it looks like we had 128 votes, and the clear favorite here with 42% ahead is literally the medium-sized figure. So we will go with that. We're going to go and leave the kind of figure height as it is and just see what else we can do there aside from the belly button. Just to make my computer a little bit more responsive here, I might go and turn this back to the default sub-D level of 1. And if ever we do have a HD morph, I can then go and preview it with a higher subdivision level here, I'm thinking. So we have a woman, we have a medium size. So what else can we do then here? We can go and maybe make her a little muscular. So a tiny bit muscular and a little voluptuous. Let's do that, and perhaps also a little heavy. And we said we're going to leave the proportional dials intact. I might just make it a tiny bit just smaller, just 10% or so. That is just, you know, that might fit in nicely with the figure. I have this open in 2 viewports so that you can keep an eye on what does this look like from one side as well as the other. Let's see we're happy with that. And we'll go on to, well, we have the navel size here, of course. So we make the navel slightly deeper and a little bit hollow, perhaps, and maybe a little bit more vertical. Like we've seen, that'll work out well. Let's see if we're happy with the body for now. And literally, you can spend hours and hours with this. Let's have a look at the face and see how we can shape that. I'll move in closer onto the face in both viewports here, because this is kind of the exciting part now, where you can really add the personality of your characters in there. So again, where you had all these things, the face is part of the head. So let's have a look under head and open that up. And again, we have a ton of sliders here. We have the base sliders, which can do things like cranium height. Once again, subtlety is the key. Cranium size, and especially if you're working from reference, these are things that you can just endlessly have fun with. Cranium slope, that is something you can't actually see this from the front, but if you look here on the side, I imagine you combine those with one another. So cranium slope, and then add some size here. Proportional head size is another one of those proportional sliders. So if you wanted her to have kind of a chibi head, you know, if that is what you want your figure to look like, maybe you're making a bobblehead type figure, you can do that. So it's a stylistic thing that can be useful. And it kind of looks weird when it goes back, when you think, hang on a minute. Hours and hours of fun. So as I said, these are also, some of these features, let's say many of these features are also available in the Genesis 8 figure. But they've all been completely overhauled when it comes to just attention to detail and also how things work under the hood. Skull above ear width. Crazy stuff. So, you know, insane amount of control you have here. This is the skull size and the skull width. You can see that on the outside here. It's funny. And this is just the head base. So I'll go leave that on here. I think the skull size, maybe I'll go turn that down a little as well, but I'll exaggerate it just a tad. Because then, so this is just the head base, because then we go on to the ears as an example. And ears, this is something that brings up a very interesting feature of Genesis 9. These are the asymmetry morphs. We'll touch on those more as we go through this, but what we've done so far is essentially applying a morph on both sides of the figure. But some aspects have been tweaked. Those are these orange sliders here, that you can have something more on one side than on the other. So perhaps I'll show you this before we go back to the ears. I might show you this on the face. So we've got these sliders here at the top here. Asymmetry face hard left and right. Then we have face round left and right. And we have face square left and right. And those are, it's essentially one morph that's been split into two. So if you imagine face hard would bulge out this part of the head on either side, but separately. So left does this, and then right does the other side. It's very subtle, but together they would form kind of a heart. But you don't have to do both at the same time. You can just do one at a time. And then round is the same thing slightly further down. And then square is that at the bottom. So it's like, this is heart, this is round, and this is square essentially. And you can be very, very granular about what you apply. So maybe on one side you've got this slightly chiseled chin here, but then on the other side you might have that. So this is like a really subtle asymmetry, but it really gives personality to the figure. And yeah, that's how asymmetry works. And you don't have to use it, but you can. And if you use it just very subtly, I mean, nobody is literally split and mirrored all the way in the middle. Indeed, Seb, and this is, I think this is really where the power is. So before this, you had to really export the character out into something like ZBrush or into Blender, and then really go to town on these small features. But it's super easy to screw things up completely, especially if you don't know that much about human anatomy, if you don't know that much about the sculpting program that you're using. So this is why I find this really cool, because for people like me who just doodle around and go, "Ooh, that looks cool," that's just really cool. I like that. So I'll just add this little asymmetry here and a little bit here. So it's lopsided, but that's, you know, that's kind of what I want. Face angle, while we're at the face here, face angle, that is this. This is now symmetric morph. So all the orange ones so far, those are asymmetric morphs. And if you want to look at all of them, anything that is asymmetric in the figure, select the actor tab here and just type asym. And then you'll see a whole list of anything and everything that's asymmetric. So you have the face roundness that we've already had. We've got the asymmetric ears. We've got asymmetric brow height and cheek height and jaw, horizontal balance. I mean, you know, crazy stuff. That is asymmetry on a whole new level. Asymmetric eye. So eyes we're going to deal with later, but this is only adjusting the kind of the almond shape of the right eye there, or of her left eye rather. Yeah, so that's how you can find them all. Click the actor tab and then just search for asym. Likewise, anything else. If we're thinking, hey, I'd like to work on the eyes now, but I don't really know where this is here, you just go and select actor and then, whoops, and then you type eye or eyes, and then you have everything that has eye in it. So eye also contains eye position, eyelids and stuff. When you just go eyes, then you have the list kind of, you know, slightly further down. I can't wait for you guys to get your hands on this, because there's just so much funky stuff to explore. Cheekbones, another thing. cheeks base, so asymmetric cheek size. Asymmetric, very cool. Jaw horizontal balance. Oh yeah, we've had that already. That's nice. Shift that around to maybe like 30%. Cheek crease depth. So many of these are really just very, very subtle. But yeah, if we make her a slightly older character, maybe we're going to go and emphasize that a little. Cheeks lower size, my goodness. It just changes the personality of your figure completely, doesn't it? Cheek middle diagonal bisect. Does that do anything? Oh yeah, there. Okay, that adds a little bit of age in there as well. And add to that also the other kind of age morph that we had there. Make the whole character age a little bit. Very, very cool. Realism through inaccuracy. Yes, absolutely. Indeed, yes. Changeling Chick said it best. Indeed, yes. So these dials here, they're tied to the actual figure. So even though some of them are named the same in Genesis 9 as they were in Genesis 8, they are completely different dials on a completely different geometry, and what you have for Genesis 8 isn't transferable to Genesis 9 as such. So that doesn't happen. Yes, good point. Thank you, Changeling Chick. Make her older. I think so too. Was there? So this is kind of, I don't really know where the old slider is, but I have a feeling I can find out by going to actor, and then I just type old. And we'll see body older, face older, eyelid fold inner toward thickness. My goodness, this is cool. So let's go and make the face older. Is this a HD morph? I can't tell. Yes. And we're also totally going to have a look at the mouth sticky morph when we come to posing. Older. And you can see it if you look at the profile here, even more than when you look at it from the front. And then if ever something has the right tendency, but you think, oh, I wish this could go higher than 100%, you can make that happen by trying to, it's not designed to be used that way, but if you wanted to make this 200% older and you wanted to see what that looks like, you can try to press that little gear icon here. This works on every slider, no matter where you are in DAZ Studio. You click on the slider here, head over to parameter settings, and then you see like a lot of stuff about the, whoops, what I was demonstrating is this little gear icon here. You click on that, I'm so sorry, you head over to parameter settings, and then this dialog comes up, and this gives you the properties of this one slider here. So this is where the color is defined, for example, or where the location is defined. So you can go and either take off the limits altogether by unticking that, or what I'd recommend is you leave limits in place and just increase the limits to something you'd want to try out. So maybe 1,000 is a bit too much, but maybe I'll try like 500, make my new limit 500. And then you test out until when this looks just about okay. And when it starts going really wonky, you can just, memorize that limit. So left click and drag and make it even older. You see, this is turning it into monster grammar now. You don't want to do that. You don't want to do that. But something slightly higher than 100 is probably going to work up to about here, maybe 150, just about. Yeah, don't do it. Don't do it too much. You can see all these features being exaggerated there. Yes, very easy to create monsters. I'm going to go put this back, actually. I'm going to put this back. There we go. And I'll put this back. I'll maybe make it 150 here, tops. No, not 1,500, just 150. Yeah. I think 150 we can live with. Monster grammar, yes. G9 is melting. Ouch, yes. Absolutely, Ainsley. You're going to love it. You're going to absolutely love it. What would 1,500 look like? Nate, let's have a look. Just for you. Okay, don't look, don't look. This program is disturbing. I hope children aren't watching. Let's put it back to 150. This never happened. We'll edit that bit out later. Face older. But this was just the face. So to make that also go hand in hand with the body now, we had another slider here, which was make the body older, like body older. Let's see what that does. And that, we've already seen that in the beginning. That leaves the face alone and only changes the body proportions to something a little older. So it's, while products like Zevo's growing up morphs would take this to the next level, we now have this kind of built in on the Genesis 9 figure, which is just absolutely awesome. I can't wait to see what else creators are going to come up with here. It's just so wonderful to have that in one figure. And once again, male or female, clothing will follow this one figure. That's just insanely awesome. What happens if we make the body older by a little bit more? So if we go and I turn that to 500, that's probably also going to be too much, but you can exaggerate this a little more probably. I wouldn't though. Let's go with 100 here. 100 is good. I just took changing Chick's Q here to make her older. Are we all okay with that? Yeah, right. I think we're all okay. We can make a younger character in a minute. But this is nice so far. Let's go back to the face. So it's literally, so now that you got the principle down, you just keep going and keep working on the character. So face, that was basically just the base face. And now we have things like eyes and all that. So face, here we go. This is now base. And now we have the brows. I haven't attached any eyebrows, so this would accentuate it. Partly the reason why I didn't do that is because the eyebrows aren't exactly ready. But I have a pre-release version of Victoria's test eyebrows here. This is partly why the figure hasn't been released yet. They're just not there yet. So I'll go and use Victoria 9's eyebrows here. It takes a second for them to pop into place. Ding, there we go. So yeah, we're getting there. Characters coming together. Let's see what's in the brow section. So brow above, depth inner. That's where that is. Outer arch, brow sharpen. So that is literally the part on the anatomy, the part on the skull. Brow skin slack. And that, of course, has an effect on where your real eyebrows are. And maybe bring them slightly lower. I remember that when we had when the Wii was new, Julia and I had great fun playing with these types of features in a very simplistic way. So Nintendo give you this option to make a me. It's kind of this digital representation of yourself, like an avatar type thing. And you have, so they're really small cartoony figures, but some of the basic features are the size of your nose, where in the face the nose is, like how high it is, how high and how tall the ears are, where your mouth is, where your eyebrows are, and just changing those attributes really dramatically change the look and feel of your character. Brow hole size, make him a little eviler here by making that come out. Also, that has a width. Amazing, isn't it, how that changes the personality? Combine them, that and that. Or make it narrow as well. Insane. Forehead hole flat. Oh yes, good stuff. So this reminds me very much of the meta mixer features, but basically as morph dials. Forehead hole round. This kind of works with the other slider here. Forehead hole thin. Hours of fun, I'm telling you. If we're happy with the brows, cheeks. Part of the face. Asymmetric cheek size left and right. What shall we call her? See, this is that other asymmetric thing again. Bulge that out, other side out. Jaw horizontal balance. Doesn't have to be 100%, you know, it could just be a little, like, you know, just make it just not 100% symmetric, like take it down to like 20% or so. Wrinkly neck. Let's see if we can Magda. That's good. Make sure the G is in there. Right, Jeremy? I'm glad you're enjoying it. I thought I'll just give you the grand tour of all these bits and pieces. Cheek middle diagonal bisect. Where was that? Oh, that's here. Okay, gotcha. Cheek middle round, cheek middle size, cheek sink. Oh yes, see what that looks like. Oh yeah, look at that. Cheek size also, especially on the side here, on the profile. That is very cool. Cheek slack. Sometimes you just have to play with the slider and see where that actually comes out. And we haven't even applied the textures yet. That's another thing. And do remember, you can. It's easy to spend many hours in here and totally get lost. Chin cleft. Oh my, really? Yes. Oops. Isn't that cool? Chin depth. You can have cleft and you can make it deeper or less deep. My God, chin height. Yes. Oh, baby. Fantastic. Magda. Jade. Winona Churchill. She has a last name now as well. Look at that. Ainsley, thank you. Elf ears, yes, coming up. Ears is basically this. There's just so much that we can do. Jaw, but else anything jaw slack? Is there anything that we need to do with the with the jaw? That accentuates the oldness here. Jaw hole height. That's just beautiful. So that's the jaw. Let's have a look at the ears, did you say? Ears, they're a little bit, let's just do the face. Let's take care of the eyes while we're in the face section. Let's take care of the eyes next, and then we'll do ears. Definitely. There are two types of elf ears that you can have, so I'll tell you that much. So there's base, and then there's eyelashes, which has base as well. I think some of these categories, so they've been renamed. So base is something, I think under the Genesis 8 figure, this used to be called real world sometimes. Exactly, X201. And it doesn't get old either. I've played with this like days already, and it doesn't get old, nor have I remembered every slide either. So Greta, I like it. Seb, let's call her Greta. Greta, even better than Magda. So once again, eyelids, crease height left. Those are very, very subtle, but you know, just know that they're there. Eyes, angle left. This is kind of cool. You can adjust the twist of each eye separately. And again, you can exaggerate that as well. If you want to make alien figures, you can totally do that. But you know, you don't have to. Also works the other way. So minus 1,000 would also do that. Whoops. Right, just don't be surprised if you go over the limits and things seemingly don't really work anymore. So I'm going to go and stay just below 100 here, like that. There. There's also a way, I think, to move the eyes closer together. Oh yeah, there's the position. That's the other thing that I was going to look for here. The eye position depth left. This is like how far the eye comes out. But there's also the height of each eye. And that is kind of nice. So there was Brian told me the story about a colleague, not a colleague, it's somebody who went and came and sold insurance plans, I think. And he told me, well, the guy had eyes that were so low in his face that I couldn't focus on anything else anymore. And I think I made a render about this guy, and I put him into the thing. Where is it? I called him the 401k guy. Have I uploaded him already? Yes, I have. This is him. The 401k guy. So this is also Genesis 9, and I've just used the eye height to make the whole thing just you know, come down in the head. But if you compare this against, say, Victoria 9, you wouldn't really know it's him. So I made him kind of short and stocky. I also tried out some auto fit from a Genesis 8, just regular straight auto fit, and it worked quite well. So yeah, really, really cool to see the amount of detail that you can put into a character just with these dials. Oh, okay. Yeah, I haven't actually met him. Good point. More square face. So those are the eyes. Is there anything else that I should show in here, Changeling Chick? Anything that you saw? There's so much stuff in the eyes section here. But it's already 5 o'clock, so I'd rather finish off one character. Let's go to the ears. Quick poll then. Do we want there's so many, right? I know, it's crazy. We haven't even talked about posing yet. But then just another quick poll then. Would we like our character to have elf ears? Yes or no? Let me know, guys. Because I'm going to show you what the ear section can bring to the party. That's actually not part of the face. That's in ears. And we haven't talked about mouth yet, so we'll do that in a sec. But yeah, elf ears. So there's, first of all, there's the asymmetry thing. So you can change the height or like the attributes about ears independently. Flap out. Different types of flapping out independently. And then there's the position. Ear position really makes a big difference. We may have to adjust this later when we have hair on them. So usually it's not that extreme with people, but it is extreme when you think, ever had this feeling that when you had your hair cut and you think, I don't think that's the same height, and you think, no, it is, it's just that your ears are not on the same height, so one ear is slightly offset, and this is what you can now do with that. So it doesn't have to be, don't go into 100% for everything, but add a little bit of variation, just like this, you know, just like 10-15%. That just, I think that just triggers in the viewer, nope, this isn't artificial, I think. Elf ear, cat ear, regular or large. Oh wow, okay. How exciting bunch of choices there. Thank you, Julia. Very cool. Cat ears. I don't even know if we have cat ears. We see if we have to sculpt them ourselves. Yes, absolutely. Like Linus says, GA claws work fairly well on the Genesis 9 figure. And I'll tell you why. The way, so there've been a bunch of changes under the hood for content creators in the Genesis 9 figure. And one of these is how we transfer rigging from an unrigged object into it so that it can become follower clothing. That's a fairly complicated process that's available as part of the transfer utility inside Dash Studio, and that looks at a donor figure and says, hey, you're rigged, you're the Genesis figure, you're like an unrigged, just solid OBJ, and we want to transfer the rigging from the Genesis figure into the clothing item, and hopefully it'll work. And that's always been a little bit of a problem. So it worked well in principle, but then when you add custom character morphs and stuff like that, there's always things that when a morph doesn't exist in the follower clothing, Dash Studio tries its best to make it follow the body shape, but often it gets it wrong. And like one of those most popular examples is that when you change the breast size, then often there's a really ugly curve underneath the clothing on the breast, and that's because Dash Studio doesn't really know the shape you're dialing up, and that leads to these issues. And usually you can do something against it. You can take the clothing then out into an external modeling application and smooth this out, but clothing creators spend a ton of time and a ton of work having to do this so that follower clothing looks okay. Much can be alleviated with deforce, but still, to make a clothing item properly fit, you have to spend a ton of time as a clothing creator, and it's tedious work, and it's work that prevents clothing creators from creating clothing. And what's happened here in the Genesis 9 figure is that that mechanism has been greatly overhauled and been greatly increased or expanded into something that will make both auto follow clothing as well as custom created clothing work much better on the figures without so much additional work. So we'll look at that a little bit later of how to do this as part of auto fitting. We are currently at 86 votes, and we have elf ears. I suppose elf ears it is then. 37%, regular 20%, large 10%. No cat ears. Thank God for that. I don't think we have cat ears. So we have two types of elf ears here. We have ear elf. That is this. That's like a little bit of elfishness. A little bit of elfishness. But we also have elf ear long. We should call that Spock ears. Very cool. So if you imagine then this in conjunction with that, you have whole new types of ears. Hope that was right. I'm just looking at the left here. Yeah, there we go. Sweet. And do that on the right. So this is now, it's fairly subtle, but it is asymmetric, so quite nice. Are those maybe a little large? Should we take those ears down a little? What do you think? Did you know what, Seb? Interesting fact. You see this on older people. Certain things on the human body don't ever stop growing. And one of those is hands and feet. They do become larger, and also ears. They also become larger. I don't know if noses are also affected, but those things, they seem to be slowly growing over time. This is why when you shake your grandpa's hand, you think he has ginormous hands, and it's correct. He hasn't always had those large ones, but one of those noses are affected. Plasma, thank you for letting me know. I had thought about that. Do we have? Is this good for the elf ear discussion? This is okay, right? Let's see what we can do with the nose. Nose is just a super exciting topic. I don't even know where it is. Let's have a look. Because there are some fascinating nose styles in here. Oh, they're in the face. Okay, this is just to bring this back. Anything that's light contains that search result. So it'll be in head, in face, and under face. We have, in fact, nose. Perfect. So there's a whole nose menu in here. Good stuff. Oh my. Oh my, this is long, isn't it? I'll just go through some of these. Nose tip size. Bigger or smaller. Very cool. Nose tip height. I'm telling you. Septum width. Do you know what the septum is? That's the septum. This little thing here. Isn't that cool? Septum height also. My goodness. There's also stuff that I didn't even know existed. Like the philtrum. If we wanted to make that a little bit more pronounced. Is that how you say that? Philtrum. I didn't even know that's how you spell that. It's the philtrum angle. But you see how it changes the personality of the character? It's insane. Yeah, philtrum. Philtrum, baby. Bridge width. Oh my God. So once you get your hands on Genesis 9, oh, look at that. Interesting. There's going to be a product, one or two products available. I don't know if they're going to make it one product or if it's going to be split into two products. I think it's going to be one, and it's going to be called something along the lines of Character Essentials, something along those lines. It hasn't been released yet, but there's essentially along the lines of head and body shapes, and you need to have those products for all these sliders to appear. So if you install the Genesis 9 figure, those won't be in here. But when you buy those products, then you can go and play with those, with all those attributes. And we want to know what you can come up with. It's fine if it's a clay render. It's fine if it has skin textures and all that. But we want to see those renders. And please send them over on the social media and hashtag it within the studio. We'd love to see. Also DAS Studio, either one of them will work fine. We'd love to see what they are and just see what you guys can come up with. Nose base angle. Oh yes, good stuff. Nose flesh size, base flesh. Oh yes. Does Grandma have a big nose, Greta, or does she have a smaller nose? I can't tell. Oh, she has elf ears. Maybe she needs a large nose as well. Nose base size. So I don't know. Is that a good nose? Bridge bump. It's you just can't stop playing with this. Old ladies have big noses. Fact. There we go. We've just added that extra step to that. Yes, good point, Changeling Chick. So there are a couple of products, just in case you have seen them on the store. They're about $7,000 each. And those are for merchants. You can use these sliders and then create your own custom character out of it and then sell that character. But for that, and this is true if you have shaders or textures or whatever, if ever you see this buzzword merchant resource, that means when you buy this, and they're usually higher priced, when you buy this, then you can cell output that you make with it. So like a texture merchant resource kit would mean you can use these textures to make your own textures for other stuff. And in this case, there is a merchant resource set available for head and body shapes on the Dash store. And if you buy that, you can create characters with this and then sell them. This is specifically geared for PAs, and they are so expensive because they contain the merchant resource license. For consumers, there'll be a very similar product available at a much, much lower price, and that does not give you the right to resell anything that you make with these morphs. Just so that you understand the difference there. We're good with the nose. Let's go and see what we can do with the mouth, because there's the neck proportion length. I'm okay with the jowly chin here. I might go and get rid of that a little later. Neck taper. Oh, there we go. Maybe that's already my slider that I'm looking for here. The neck taper slider. Well, taper neck A, taper neck B. Oh, look at that. Good stuff. Trap size. Oh yeah. And neck mass. Oh, okay. Yeah, maybe Greta has kind of a slightly thinner neck. And also get rid of the jowly bit here without impacting that too much. Yeah, I think that's kind of nice. I might leave that as it is here. Greta's head. Greta happens to have elf ears. That's just how the cookie crumbles. Oh yeah, proportion neck length. We've seen that already. Hours of fun. This isn't easy to calculate under the hood. I mean, on one hand, it looks funny when she does this, but look at how natural this is at every position of the slider. So if you were to do this in a modeling program, you would use proportional editing and make sure these polygons here would stretch out kind of proportionally, but there comes a point where something just looks off really, really easy and quickly, and it's just marvelous that doesn't seem to happen here. So that's our custom character so far, and we haven't even played with the mouth yet. I'm looking forward to that. This was the default, and I think I had it something like that. I can't decide now. What do you think, shorter neck or slightly longer neck? I can't decide. Let me know, shorter neck or longer neck. See what you like. And we can adjust this later. I'm going to leave it on 0, but let's see if we can come up with something. Michael says shorter. X21 says giraffe. Dragon, it says no neck at all. See, this is why you should. This would be no neck at all. I don't know. 1500 neck length. That this program is not suitable to be watched by children. I'll just go and switch the limits off, shall I? Okay, Mike, this is for you. 1500. There comes a point where it no longer looks good. Oucharoo. I'm going to pour myself another cup of coffee while we debate, should we have a longer neck or a shorter neck? So I think I'm erring on the side of a shorter neck here. I will switch the limits back on. Use limits. While you guys tell me how long that neck should be, let's go and have a look at the mouth, because mouth has exciting things to offer as well. And bear in mind, this is without skin texture, so the whole texturing side, we're going to cover that in a moment. We'll just bring this to an end for another 10 minutes. Come on. So this was neck, and this was, I think, also under face. did we have the mouth? Yes. So mouth base, and then we have the lips in particular. Those are two types of categories here. Very cool. Biscuits likes the quadruple XL neck. We could do, Nico. The pencil neck, that's right, yes. We should need, yeah, we don't have medium in the poll. Good point. Good point. And then there are the teeth liners. Thank you for reminding me. I really appreciate that because it's really easy to get lost in these things. I might bring the lighting a little bit more even from the face here. If ever you need to do that, and you're working with filament, I'm using the general HDRI that comes with DAS Studio, the Ruins, and I'd like to turn it around just so that she doesn't have the shadow on the side, that I'm just going to turn this around. If ever you need to do that and you don't see an environment options tab here, create yourself one under create environment options node, leave the default, and then it's here. You also, this generates itself automatically if you switch the viewport over to iRay and then back. But in case you don't want to do that, you can just go and add yourself one in here. So under dome here, I'm just going to go and twiddle with the dome Y orientation. And then this is the effect that we have here. To visualize this a little better, what I'm doing here is the equivalent of holding down Shift, right click and drag in Substance Painter. If you're familiar with that feature, if you like that feature and if you want it in DAS Studio, this is basically what I'm doing here. To visualize that, you can draw the dome, also replace the HDRI altogether, and then you see what actually happens here. So the whole lighting dome orientation changes. So I don't want to make it completely blown out, just make it just like this here. And I'll switch the dome off. And then we go back into Grandma's head here. So back under actor, and we had head. And was it under face? We had the mouth. There we go. 79 votes, and we want a shorter neck. Okay, so I'll go make that a little shorter here. Let's do that before we get going here. Cheek, that's not it here. Neck is here slightly shorter. Well, not that short, but slightly shorter. Yeah, thinking maybe -30. Let's do that. There, okay. Thank you for your votes, guys. I appreciate that. I demand a recount. So that was neck. Did I say mouth? Mouth base. So asymmetric, once again with the asymmetry thing, asymmetric mouth angle left. All right. And this is in addition to expressions. So expressions or pose styles, they'd be independent from this. So this is literally what your character would look like in a resting position. Mouth mid-curve left, that is this here. I might leave the asymmetry alone here. Or maybe I'll just do this, like 10% here. That's cool. Mouth above size inner, oh my. That is this little part above the lips here. And then outer. The attention to detail, unbelievable. Mouth depth and height, so those are the bigger ones. It's almost like you need different colors for the ones that have a bigger impact and separate them out from stuff that is really just like fine-tune adjustment. See how what personality change that makes? Just the height of her mouth, much like the height of the nose. I think we haven't played with that yet either. Like the height of the nose. Yeah, very, very different. So yeah, like I'm looking at both of these. I'm thinking 40 might be nice. Mouth realism is set to 1 or like 100%, but you can also turn that off. I think this is for cartoony type figures. Mouth size, you overdo it and it looks crazy, but you blend in a little bit of that. I gotta tell you, one day I would love to speak to somebody who makes these morphs. I don't know who does this or how long they've been working on this. Mouth width. Look at that. You can make the mouth a little smaller. Notice how you don't see anything in the profile, but when you look at it from the front, I remember getting lost in these sliders before, but I don't think I've ever had like that an amazing attention to detail here. Teeth next. Before we have a look at lips. Teeth, we can really only judge when we have Greta open her mouth. And I might actually just call her Greta, just so that I remember that name. Greta. Was Greta the name that we decided on? So to open the mouth, there's a morph in here, and I will just go and search for it. It has to do with jaw. So jaw open and jaw open wide. And you just type that in, jaw, and you have a look where that is. And here it is. Jaw. No, actually, sorry, that's not under the actor. This is now a pose control dial that I'll add up. And you can see that the actor has some jaw things in here, but also pose controls. So in here, there's jaw clench and chin compression. Those are poses. You're meant to change those on a per image basis, but then jaw open wide does this. Oh yeah, we see a little bit of distortion here because of all these stacked morphs. So we might want to be careful with that. If I can figure out what that was, I can also dial that down. There's two of them. One is jaw open and one's jaw open wide. And these are kind of used while, also notice it's not just the jaw that opens here. So there's other stuff that happens. Look at the ears, especially in the profile. Look at how the ears actually deform the whole head, which is what happens in real life. So there's all those attentions to detail. Sometimes when you don't do it, then you see something is wrong. So I'm just going to open her mouth really wide, just so that we can have a look at the teeth, because the teeth are they're just great. There's also the tongue as well. Let's not forget the tongue as well. So I'll leave that open here, and I'll go back into the actors category. Under mouth, at the bottom we have teeth. Let me just go and say teeth, so that we just filter this out a little bit. So teeth, and notice what happens here on the teeth now. Teeth center gap upper. Just the upper row of teeth get a little bit of a gap, like happens on older people. I remember when I was younger, I never really understood dental floss because I just couldn't even put it in between my teeth. Now that I'm an old person, I use it every day. Teeth individual taper. If you don't want to see this with the mouth open, you can just go, and this is another great thing now. You can just go and click the eyeball icon on the figure, and then that just leaves the mouth here. Yeah, so teeth taper, that's what that does. Teeth individual width. And that is kind of what an old person would have. And you know, sometimes when I see these morphs that Blue Jaunty makes, amazing. When you look at the teeth, every figure has a different kind of, different types of teeth, and individual teeth are slightly rotated and might overlap and whatnot. And this is really what makes a good custom character. And the moment they smile and you see the teeth, when they're perfect, we think uncanny valley. If they're not, like, teeth irregular, hello, there we go. Oops. Yeah, teeth regular and irregular. It's all built into the figure. No additional product needed to give that extra variety. And I have no doubt that over time, content creators PAs will come up with all kinds of other things of what you can do with the teeth. Teeth length lower. This is not so much the length of the teeth, but more like the gum length, the gum line, as it recedes over time as you get older. And you have that on the upper as well. So you probably, if she's an older lady, she'd probably have maybe slightly irregular teeth, exposed gum lines, and also maybe the teeth would kind of taper. And then there's the gap as well. What else? We've got teeth size lower. Sometimes you just need larger teeth or smaller teeth. That's the teeth, and we're sticking to it. Let's bring the rest of Greta back. And take a look at... No, that's it, right? No, nose height. There's something about nose base height. Did we play with that? How high the nose is? Let me just go and put her mouth back together here. Jaw. Pose controls. Let's go close your mouth again. Go back to the nose height here. Base height. Higher nose or lower nose? Let me know. Nose higher in the face or lower in the face? Well, this is very high. This would be very low. This makes her look more like a, character living out there by herself in the woods. Whereas this is more like the friendly neighborhood grandma. Noses grow longer with age, so we need to have a nose age slider. Septum height, that was that. Then we have the tip height. Nose wing height. My God. Nose wing lower height. I don't think we've ever had that much control over noses. Placement of nose, exactly, yes. Fangs, or maybe we can bring in the crow wings from the Crow bundle. Did you see that? That was released, I think, yesterday or the day before. Yeah, maybe we can bring that in. That's a good outfit for her. Nose base height. So once again, this was the medium one. And then this is the higher nose. And this is the lower nose. And anything in between. I'm almost thinking we need a kind of a lower nose, but that's just me. I'll let you guys decide. While we work on the nose height, let me show you something. I should have really done that while we had the jaw posing thing. This is something that Changeling Chick brought to my attention. There's a new funky slider here that is also asymmetric, and it has to do with the lips. So I'm going to go and open her mouth up a little bit, just like that. And yeah, let's go and do that. I just want to make the focal length not quite as scary. I should really do that with a custom camera. You get the drift, you get the drift. So there is a morph here, which is called Mouth Sticky. And I'm just going to go and look for it. And this is not part of how you build a character, but this is how you would pose a character. But while we're talking about mouth and face, this is something I just thought was so cool. I wanted to show you this. So sometimes when your lips stick together on one side, but not on the other, like this, that, things can happen. And this is set with a mouth sticky power slider. And you have these values here. That is mouth sticky control left and right. And if you crank one of these up, like the left side, you can see that part of the mouth on one side is sticking together. It's insane. And you can adjust that as you see fit on either side, so they're asymmetric as well. You can reduce the sticky power. And you can do that for the left and the right independently. Isn't that fantastic? There's also something for the center here. So mouth sticky upper center. And then there's the lower center, so you could kind of do this, and I think it's being guided by this as well. The sticky power. Isn't that cool? It's just, I don't even know who comes up with these ideas. But now that you mention it, you think, yeah, where's the slider been all this time? Maybe you're speaking from one side of your mouth. Like there's an American actor who does that. What's his name again? He was in aside from Humphrey Bogart and Peter Falk, there's another guy. What's his name? He was in Frasier as Daphne's fiance. What's his name? He speaks from the corner of his mouth. Saul Rubinek, that's what I mean. Sticky power slider, perfect for those peanut butter eaters. Absolutely, yes. Sylvester Stallone. That's not that James Cagney. Not who I mean. No. It's Saul Rubinek. That's him. Saul Rubinek. For him, it would be perfect. So we want a medium placement of the nose, do we? Okay, let's do that. 49% of you say medium, and then the next lower value was with 32% was low. Gotcha. Joe Pesci does it too. You're right. Absolutely. I think some people do it without noticing it, and they don't do it deliberately. It's just, it's just what happens in people. Isn't that cool? So thank you so much for bringing that to my attention. It's one of those sliders that I hadn't seen. Yeah, so sticky power controls the power of all of these, and use in moderation for those peanut butter eaters. Absolutely insane. I will correct the nose. Do I need to correct the nose? I think we're good on the nose, aren't we? Height, nose height, base height. This is medium, this is slightly lower, this is really low. Yeah, if I look at the profile, I think we're good here. Are we good with the character so far? Because then let's move on to skin textures, and we'll talk a little bit about we'll give her something to wear and make a funky render out of her, I'm thinking. Jay, also save your scene. Have you thought about that? Let's save our scene. I'll go and make a new folder here on my desktop. Custom characters. And I'll go and map this into my ever-growing library here on the DAZ Studio Formats add base directory. And I'm doing that so I can keep all these scenes and maybe any related items grouped together. If I do that, at the very bottom, custom characters comes up. If ever you needed to move any of these things up or down, so these are all custom libraries here. Genesis 9, beta, product, base figures, Japanese alley, those are all custom libraries I have here. If ever you needed to move the location of those around, you can head over here to preferences. No, not preferences. Into somewhere, here's. Where was that again? Content Directory Manager. That's where that was. And then in here, under DAZ Studio Formats, these are all my libraries here. If I wanted to move them around, if I wanted to have custom characters at different position, you can select them from here, then move top. That's at the very top. Move to the bottom. That's at the very bottom. Or you can just move them up 1 or 2. I'll leave them at the bottom here. Just so that you know how that goes, because I think keeping scenes in order and kind of management of how you do that is always a good idea. So if we had this as, say we make 3 custom characters, I don't think we're going to do that today, but just to get you the principle, I would probably go and create another subfolder in here, and we're going to call that one Greta. Here's Greta, and since I'm not going to distribute her or anything, I just want to keep her as it is this way. I can go and just save her as a scene subset, and that'll save all the attributes about my character without any other parameters in my scene. So if I say subset, I'll just go and say Greta v1, And DAZ Studio tells me or asks me, what would you like to save? Which aspects of the scene would you like to save? And I'm going to just tick Greta and nothing else. So then I know this is my custom character, and anything selected underneath it, like the eyebrows and whatever clothing she would be wearing. And if I do that, I can bring this character into another scene, like say an environment that I'm working on. And that's kind of nice. And I'm going to go and keep doing that if I now go and give her clothing and skin textures and all that. And then I can go and use this character in other scenes without having to worry about, is this a character preset and have things not been saved and whatnot. This is by far the easiest way to save a character with skin as well as clothing as well as poses. So I suppose first let's give her something to wear. I don't really know if I have something appropriate here. I'm not sure if a bikini is going to be the right outfit. Perhaps not. She could just wear something like Escher's D-Force collection #1. I'm thinking maybe the whole thing, or just the jumper here. Let's do that, just the jumper. So notice this is now clothing made for Genesis 8. And even though it has D-Force on it, I might not worry about D-Force so much, but just to let you know what the trousers would fit on the Genesis 9 object, and also to talk a little bit more about how the new figure handles these things. There's this auto fit menu you're already familiar with. It comes up when you try to fit clothing from a previous generation on the current generation. And this can happen even with clothing going all the way back, I think, to the original Genesis figure. So we have Genesis 8 male, 8 female, 3 male and female, 2 male and female, all the original Genesis figure, which was also based on one mesh. So you had the male and the female and everything else on one mesh on the original Genesis figure. So in my case, this was made for Genesis 8 female, but then watch what happens next. This is kind of cool. And DAZ Studio could never infer it as well as it can with the Genesis 9 figure. You go to what type of item is this? And this was always a little bit vague. And now we have currently in this beta version of DAZ Studio that I'm using, we have these fitting templates here, and I can now pick one that best describes the item of clothing. And I believe Mada made this, and the plan is to expand these into other items. So now we have like footwear or gloves. So mine are kind of tight fitting trousers here. So I'm thinking this is going to be a bodysuit tight template, but sometimes you have a little bit like, wider dresses. And now we have a dress, long, tight, or loose template, for example. And those are great for that. And so these same templates are also used when you have an unrigged OBJ and you want to rig it for use inside DAZ Studio. The same clothing templates are being used, and they work really, really well. So I'm going to use bodysuit tight template, hit accept, and then DAZ Studio does some calculations here under the hood. And now Greta wears pants that were really not made for Genesis 9, but I really can't complain. I mean, they do look really well. They look great. Thank you, Escher. Let's go give her something like the jumper. I don't know if you can use the whole load all. That'll put all the clothing items on her that are in the set. I might just use it separately. If you do use and once again tight, if you use something like this, then multiple items of clothing would be loaded, like in our case, like 4. And it means that you're being asked this question 4 times, once per clothing item. This is another example that can happen, and it will happen. And you can either go and fix this in an external editor, or what I'm going to do, I'm going to select that clothing item, which is the top. There's D-Force, of course, as well. I don't know if the undershirt is D-Forced, but the easiest way to get rid of this is to add a smoothing modifier. So with the item selected, edit, object, geometry, add smoothing modifier. So this is a kind of an easy fix to do that. The following nodes were unable to have smoothing modifier added. Why is that then? Does it maybe have one already? That could be. It does. Perfect. So in that case, when it's already on there, then we can just go and increase that like to 10, see what happens. Nope, 10 wasn't good. Iterations, make that not 92. I was more like saying 10, that sort of thing. And if that doesn't work, you're gonna have to go and, yeah, that doesn't work. Maybe generic works better. Generic also doesn't work. Okay, fine. In that case, we'll have to look into what adjustment morphs we have here. Often there's something like expand all. And we don't have that visible to me now either. Expand all, there it is. So expand everything, there we go. But if you're using, if this is a default garment, it'll just even itself out. So I'm hoping that over time we're going to have a new library of clothing for Genesis 9. Yeah, so like this thing in the middle here. Another option that you could consider, just to show you what is possible, if you needed to make yourself an expand all kind of dial, similarly to what we had before, edit object geometry, and you can go and add yourself a push modifier. That's another kind of magic tool. If you add that in here, you can give it a name. So push modifier, we can just call it expand all if we wanted to. That's an arbitrary label that once it's on here, you now have, where is it? Oh, is it under general? Sorry, general mesh offset expand all. This is my thing now, and it's set to 1 by default. So 0 is that, and you can go and dial this in or out. And just in case you ever come across an item of clothing that doesn't have expand all, you can apply it this way. But careful, it could be that clothing may expand in places that you don't want it to do that, like the straps here. But we're good. So just, you know, just something else to keep in mind. There's always ways to adjust it. You just need to know where that is. So now that she's got something to wear, let's go through the skin texture details that we have, and also talk a little bit about what does 8K skin detail mean. I'm going to go over here to the Genesis Starter Essentials, Genesis 9 Starter Essentials, and I'll head over to the Materials section. And under iRay, I'm going to go over to Skin. So we have 4 skin types of Kiwi. Yes, Mesh Grabber will also work. If you have Mesh Grabber, then you can also just make fine adjustments with Mesh Grabber. Absolutely, yes. Oh, smoothing was off. Man, Ryukin, thank you so much for letting me know that. Just quickly returning to the expand all, set it to 0, go back to the mesh smoothing, which was set to off. Switch it on, everybody's happy. Ryukin with the eagle eye, thank you. Very good. And default settings here as well. Yeah, of course Escher would have put that on there, duh. So there, fixed. Multiple ways, thank you Ryukin, very spotted, very well spotted. So with Genesis 9, we now have, with the base figure, so this is not an additional product that you have to buy. With the base figure, we have 4 types of skin for the male and the female character. They range from Caucasian to Asian, over to African American and to Hispanic. And let's just see what Greta looks like with any of these. And those, once I apply them, they only apply themselves currently in the beta version that I have to just the skin. So the eyes and the eyelashes and the inner mouth, they are not affected by that. So I'll go and make that a little bit less blown out, maybe 6,000. There. Well, 5 was actually, was pretty well. 5,000 was pretty cool. So you have to, currently in my beta version, I have to apply those all separately. I'm sure there's going to be a hierarchical material preset that'll take care of that. So I'm going to have to go to the mouth. Mouth has separate things here, 2 types of mouth skin details. We'll just use number 1. I don't think I've ever tried number 2. We'll look at the mouth more closely. Then we need to have the eyes. So eyes, selected eyes are in here. She could have like these eyes here. I like those. That's a good kind of iris color. That might not work with every skin color though. So we could keep it more, you know, more generic with brown or something like this. If you do have a particular eye color that you prefer, do let me know. The janky neck, yes, we're going to fix the janky neck, Lioness, thank you. Tears, while I have it here, I don't know if the material was applied on that. That looks a little wonky in filament. Eyebrows have things already, eyes, mouth, we need the eyelashes. Bats for lashes, and we have a ton of stuff here, so under color I can just go and make them black. But that only defines the color, so now we need to add the style to it, and we can do something like cartoony. And now we have the opacity map applied there, or I can say curly, and that's just in the opacity map how that applies. Eyelashes dense, dense 2, messy, yeah, messy, I can see that. I can see messy working. Natural, short, yeah, short eyelashes. Eyelashes sparse, interesting. And anything else? Sparse lower. Man, too much choice. How about dense? I like it dense. And perhaps we also need to find some hair for her. I think we have all the materials covered now. Let's see if we can find some hair. Do I have a hair? And then we're going to have a look at the other skin materials. Hair. Would she have an updo like that? Or like a Lindy hair? Shaved. Oh, that's not going to work on Genesis 9, I don't think. The baseball cap hair, I don't think it's going to work either. This might work. The curls. Curl me hair, that might be fun. I don't know, we can try it. We'll see what it looks like. She's going to be gardening. Updo. She's a practical lady. Let's do that, actually. Let's do updo. I'm with updo. Mohican. I'll go and say cancel. And then auto fit doesn't do anything. And that looks scary because it's kind of at the front of the face and stuff. Once Dash Studio comes back, this is a little bit of a heavy hair as well. Let me go and remove that. Let's do the updo. I like the updo idea. Updo. Updo, this one here, Rose Noel updo. Rose Noel. And we're looking at a Genesis 8 female hair product. And this isn't really defined, so I can just say none. And over time, I think we're going to get more templates as well. There was even talk that PAs will be able to amend them if you need something specific. Like Fugazi and I were talking about this. Welcome, by the way. I've seen you in the chat earlier there, John. John was saying earlier that he wishes there would be a template that would make like the Victoria 3 style mono boob come out. So that might improve the fit on tighter fitting clothing around the breast area. Very clever idea. Maybe we can have that happen. I don't think she's a blonde, to be brutally honest. Let's make her more like a, could be a redhead. Yeah, just for preview purposes, make it brown or black. Actually, she's an older lady. Make it gray already. There we go. Perfect. She's practical. I like it. Let's see if I can bring in, let me just dial up a natural pose on her. Also save her out as a scene subset. Now I'm going to save her with just Greta clothed. I'm going to go and save her with all these bits and pieces out here. I'll bring in a little light set, and then we can talk about a natural pose, and then just talk about the differences between the 8K and the regular 4K skin map here. I hear there's been some confusion about this, and many of you are worried, can Genesis 9 actually render on my graphics card, and is Victoria 9 and whatnot too memory hungry? I want to alleviate some of those fears, because I totally didn't think about this on the Genesis reveal stream. I believe, I'm just going to get the lights right, and then while it's working, we're going to talk through that. I have saved out a natural G9 pose. And poses, they'll be coming out, of course, on release day, and many more over time. Oops. Was it like maybe like -10? Whoops, no, that's not it. -30, so -30 is too much. I'll make it 25. That's probably enough. And here also make it 25. That's a natural-ish pose, so we're gonna leave with that. She does have shoes. That's okay. That's cool. That's our custom character. Very nice. So light set, maybe something by K1 is going to work. Perhaps since it is coming up to Halloween, we can use this one here. This is really dramatic. Let's make it not quite that dramatic. Maybe this one here. Processing HDRI. Let's see what she looks like. See if we needed to tweak the. There we go. That's nice. Maybe it's just a little bit bright, but snazzy render out of the box. Gotta say, I might just make it a little less blown out to get it to be more dramatic. Nice, sweet. Yeah, okay. I like it. I like it. It's good. It's good. It's good the way it is. Let me go and bring in a camera here quickly. And then on it, I'll just make the focal length a little bit more palatable, like 120. Just so that the foreshortening isn't quite as bad. And this is our first custom character. Sweet. I'm going to go and make a duplicate of that. Duplicate. Edit, perhaps, Jay. Edit. It's under edit. Duplicate node. This camera is going to be camera mid shot. And this one is going to be camera close. And then if I switch over to that, we'll go and have a little portrait of her here. Okay. We're good with the hair. Let's say we're good with the hair. Let's render that out. And then look at her in large. Let's say 2000. Well, not 25,000. 2000 by 2000. And I'll do this at 1000 with 1000 iterations. I'm going to use the denoiser. I'll save my scene, of course. Full scene this time so that the lighting gets saved as well. Everything. And then we'll let it render, and then we'll talk about additional things that we can do there to make the figure pop. We haven't given her an expression yet, and but you get the picture. There's just a ton of time you can invest into that. So what I've done is I've applied the regular maps that come with Genesis, and they are the diffuse textures are 4K maps, so exactly like what we have on most Genesis 8 characters. So the diffuse textures as such, that hasn't actually changed. They're still 4K by 4K, albeit the placement of them has changed. But there's now an additional map that is optional to apply, so it's not And we do need to change the janky neck here. We'll do that. We'll do that in a second. But there is an additional map that we can apply if we wish, and that is the 8K detail map. And that is the one that is basically a detail normal that is applied in addition to everything else that we have on the Genesis figure. And that's the same for Victoria as well as the base Genesis figures. We have one for the male skin and one for the female skin. And that is an 8K map. And that is so large because anything smaller than that isn't really showing up the amount of normal detail that we want. So while you can reduce it, it has been shown, and I haven't looked into this myself, but it's been shown that that doesn't have that wow effect that the 8K map has. So if you render the character like that, like I have right now, it doesn't take any more processing power or VRAM on your card than you currently use with Genesis 8 and 8.1 characters. If you apply the additional normal detail map, the 8K map, it'll cost you just over 80 megabytes of additional VRAM. So it's really not that much. And I've tested this out on my 4 gigabyte VRAM GTX 970. I can render a Victoria 9 out with no problem, including hair and clothing. So that's, you know, I just wanted to mention that. It's not actually that big a deal, but the wow factor in regards to details that you see is phenomenal. And I haven't applied it here, but we're going to do a comparison render with this skin, with the detail, with the 8K detail enabled and without it. Just now, just 1,000 iterations, doesn't take all too long. Yes, absolutely, Linus. I've got a lot of questions about this. And so my GTX 970 has 4 gigabytes of VRAM, and I think Victoria 9 with hair and clothing, not an environment, but with a HDRI, fairly beefy one, took about 2.5 gigabytes. So it's just over 2 gigabytes. So if you have a 3 gigabyte card that is kind of happy with that studio right now, then you will be able to use the Genesis 9 as well as Victoria with the additional 8K detail. Custom characters, I'm going to go and put this into here, renders, and let's call this one Greta Skin 1. I'll just call it SD. SD isn't good regular. There we go. As that. I haven't run D4s. I might do that after the show. Just wanted to show you where to apply this additional detail, and then we're going to do renders with essentially with all these skin colors and skin shades, and you can decide which one your favorite is. So this is back under figures with your Genesis figure selected, on the starter essentials, under materials, under array, under skin. You have these two things here. So this here is the Genesis 9 feminine detail normals for feminine, and this one is for the male figure. So these are, you can apply either one of them. I'm going to apply these, and I'll show you where this actually shows up. So it's on the surfaces tab. On Greta, under skin, there is a new channel here. Which is it? Under base. It's called detail. There we go. That's where that is. Detail. And this is essentially what that enables. So when that is off, this is now the map isn't loaded when you render it. When this is on, this is essentially what I've enabled by loading that preset. We can see that the detail normal map is about to be loaded, so we can see it as a preview. But yeah, this is where that is, and this is also how you can apply more or less detail on there. So yeah, this is where that map is being loaded in there. And if you follow that path, usually it kind of pops up. It doesn't do that. When you follow that path and examine it, it's an actual 8K map. So I'll render her out with the details, and then we can go and compare that in Photoshop, and you can see the difference. So it's applied on the whole body. So the detail is going to be literally on every piece of her outer skin, and it makes a huge difference. While this is rendering, she's a modern elf. That's right, exactly. And also, we haven't even discussed expressions here. I think I kind of covered that on in the Genesis 9 reveal stream. Let me just see if what the questions are that we've got in here. Thanks to my moderators. Leo DeGrant sold pre-ordered. Well, thank you so much. That is really, really good to hear. Leo, wonderful. Wonderful to hear. That is just so cool. Audience questions. There's so many. By the way, if I don't get around to answering any of these questions, they don't actually disappear. So we do keep track of this list. And if there is something that requires a little bit of a more in-depth explanation, watch out for the DAS YouTube channel. I'm going to start making some shorter uploads for the channel starting in October, so that if you do have questions and you want something explained, then do let us know. I can take care of that and then just make a video and upload that to the DAS channel. It would be my pleasure and my privilege. And says, what is R3DS Wrap? That's been kind of answered in the comments. R3DS Wrap is a wrapping software that lets you wrap one geometry around another geometry like this, essentially. And it's designed that if you had two shapes like two characters, they have different topology. You want one topology to become that of the other. And that is what R3DS Wrap can do. And so I've actually done a little experiment that I've uploaded here to ArtStation. I've taken the Lilith 7 character from Genesis 3. So I'll say 8K detail. There we go. See if we can see it, or if we need to zoom in more there. I've wrapped with that program, I've wrapped Lilith 7 around Genesis 9, and this here is the result. Do I have full body shots? Yes, I do. So this is the Genesis 9 topology, the Genesis 9 figure, and I've used R3DS Wrap to use my use Lilith 7 as a donor figure, wrap Genesis 9 around it, and these were the results. And I have to say, it worked extremely well. And this is where I had to use this ERC freeze. There's some of you have been asking about that. Yeah, I'm showing you, I'm explaining some of the process here, and I think further at the bottom, these are also, it's a good example of the 4 skin shades that we have. This is Lilith 9 Alpha in DAS Studio, and this is what the wrap program looks like. So this is the Genesis 9 base figure, and this is the completely different topology on Lilith 7, and you tell the program, this is the source, this is the destination, and it then goes and wraps this around that. And you give it some parameters, make some adjustments, and then the next thing you know is you have something like a different character, and that's completely custom. I've covered that in a little series on the DAS channel. Let me see if we can open Photoshop here quickly and look at both these renders side by side, and then see if we wanted to make them slightly larger. See what happens. Will there be backward compatibility to Genesis 8 characters and clothing? David, that is a good question. Not for the morphs that I've shown here. So some of these morphs will exist in some shape or form in Genesis 8, but they're going to be, it's a different figure. So as such, if you bought, say, I don't know, Lilith, not so much Lilith, but like Victoria 8, you can't dial her in on Victoria 9. That would be a different product. Scripts, load files into stack. And that's here. It is under here. It is in here, and then there is that. See what the difference is. Those two in the same stack. And here we can go and zoom in a little bit. So clothing, on the other hand, has this auto-fitting mechanism that I've shown, and that works relatively. That works well. So this is it at 100%. And this is the AK with the AK detail, and this is without the AK detail. It looks like we may have to render it a little bit longer. So this is the regular material as it comes in, and it looks very similar to the Genesis 8.1 realism here on the skin. But if you render this longer, then more detail will come out here. So I think maybe 1,000 iterations was just not enough for me to get that detail out. Let me go and do that though after the show. I'll render this out with like 5,000 or even 8,000 iterations. But I'll make some more renders with her. She looks almost blurry here, doesn't she? So that is just, the render engine needs, whoops, just needs more time to bring out that detail here. So that's why it looks a little smudgy. If you let that render more, then you get these really nice pores. So I'm going to go and make 3,000 by 3,000 renders, or maybe even 4,000 by 4,000 renders of this that we've done there, and then I'll go and upload that. Let's go and just while we do that, use a different skin here. This was the feminine skin number 1. Let me go and use the second one on here. I think the eyebrows are probably a little bit too light for that. Let me go and make them a little darker. Eyebrows is brown and darker, so let me go and make that just slightly darker there. And also I'll leave that, but I'll go and make that maybe like, 4,000, and go let that render out. See if there's any more questions. And all these sliders that I've shown come in the base Genesis 9 figure. No, that is not the case. There are some sliders that will be in the Genesis figure. Like if you think about expressions, it's exactly what it was on previous figure generations. You'll have a few in the base figure, and you'll have many more as a separate product to purchase. So like for expressions, I think you have 6 or 8 that come for free with the base figure, but then you have like 50 more that would come with the head and body shapes. That is how that works. How are they handling the attachments, Michael? Yes, the attachments, the genitals are in fact handled exactly like on the Genesis 8 figure. We had some releases in which you had these fluid gender figures like Catty, and those figures came with both male and female genitals. So it's the same principle on the Genesis 9 figure, that you have one base figure and you have a male and a female attachment, from what I've seen. Do we know if measure metrics will be updated for Genesis 9? I don't know, to be honest. That is something I can't tell you. Maybe, but I'm not entirely sure. Blue Games, can we go by height in regards to, can we have 150 centimeter tall woman? I think this would kind of relate to the measure metrics, if that were to be updated to work with Genesis 9, which at this point I don't know. Usually what I do is I export my objects into Blender and let Blender tell me how tall it is, but that's not going to help you if you wanted to have something exactly 150 centimeters. So that's probably where measure metrics would be better. Ray, are these morphs built in, or are they part of the head and body morphs? Yes, they are indeed part of the head and body morphs, what I've shown you here. Can you import meshes into Blender, Alpha Demonius? Yes, you can. You can just, nothing has changed there. You can export the OBJ straight into Blender and work on it there. You can try the bridge, but if you want to use the more manual way, you can do that too, or you can use something like diffeomorphic. That is also a way to exchange your character. How will the asymmetry affect expressions, Seb? Good question. Let's have a look at it in just a second. Once this is rendered out, a few more iterations, and now I can see more of the micro detail coming out. So I'm just over 1,000 iterations. It's 1,300 iterations, and now I can see the skin detail coming out here. So for the reference renders that I'll make, I'll post this on YouTube and on my Dask gallery and on the ArtStation page. You can go and have a look at the full size renders. They're just going to take a little bit of time to render, and then you can compare them yourself. Can we get wrinkles with morphs for medium or aged characters? So I think Green Dragon, those are probably products that maybe Zevo has in the works. So there are basic older shapes as I've shown you here, but like the extreme attention to detail with things like what Zevo has, I don't think that's included in any of those morphs, not as far as I've seen it. But Zevo's your man. I'm sure he's working on it. Alan Riley, when you create a custom character, do you still create and save the head and body morphs separately? If I were to work on my own things for my own renders, I probably wouldn't. But if you were to sell this, then I would suggest you do that. There is, PAs have a tool for that. So you can just go and have one slider that dials in both the head and the body shape with one thing. PAs have a tool to split that out, and for those of us who are not a PA, you can get a product from the DAS store called Head Splitter. There's a video on my channel in which I've explained how to use it. That's a really simple tool that can do a lot more, but it's really good at splitting the head from the body and basically just create 2 additional new sliders, one just for the head, one for the body. So that's really easy. If you are thinking of distributing your characters, then I would strongly recommend you give the user the option to have a head and a body separately from one another. Simply because it's more practical. Sometimes you want to blend in a body shape without that affecting your head. So that is why I would recommend you do that. What is my pixel filter radius at? I don't even know what that is. I'm so sorry. That is something I don't know. Please explain it to me. Question though, but for Genesis 8 males, sorry, Genesis 9 males, does Genesis 9 offer more or include realistic looking morph dials for genital bulge? I don't know, Fed. I haven't looked at that. It's possible. I don't really know. I've not looked at the genitals too closely, I'm afraid. Turn off the denoiser. Yes, that's also a possibility. Yeah, thanks, Changeling Chick. That's a good one. I like the denoiser and then just keep rendering it. So the denoiser isn't a replacement for render time, but for real good detail, you just have to let it render. I like using the denoiser. It doesn't make a picture better or worse. It just might get you a converged result you're looking for faster. So like this has now been rendering like 6 minutes, just coming up to 3,000 iterations, and I think it's getting nice here. Yeah, so you can see on here already. I hope this is coming out on the stream. This is kind of the 8K detail, and you can tone that down, so it's happening all over the body. Yeah, I think 4,000 or 5,000 iterations is probably a good thing. Animate, as far as I know, Michael, will work. It'll depend on some of the Ani blocks that you'll get with it. But yes, as far as I can see, Animate does work. The few Ani blocks that I have tested out. I can't tell you if there will be sample animations converted as Ani blocks with the new figure. I don't know that, but Animate will work. It literally just looks at the bones of the figure, which have changed, so that the bone naming conventions have changed, which is why poses from Genesis 8 aren't going to work out of the box with Genesis 9. But there'll be tons of new pose sets out for Genesis 9 specifically, and the Man Friday and Riversoft are also working on products that will convert Genesis 8 poses on the fly. I mean, did you try to apply G8 preset on G9? That's not going to work. It's just going to ignore you because the sliders it references are not coming in. Oh, that is so nice. Michael App 3, that is really nice. Thank you so much. He says on Twitch, thank you so much. Watching you work with it absolutely sold me on the pre-order. That is really good to hear. I'm really glad you like it. Really glad you like it. Is there any Kiwi? Is there any older skin textures with the tour discolor? I don't know what you mean. I'm afraid. You're very welcome. So I'll go ahead and render these out in this detail. Let me go and save this out, skin to 8K detail. And then we can go and compare. This is kind of a slightly uncool comparison here now, but whoops. Bahahat skin detail. If I go and switch this off and let it go and just render it again with the same amount of iterations, then I can go and whoops, bring that into here. So skin color is now going to be different. But if it's just the detail we're concerned about, did I do this correctly? I didn't, did I? Yes, yeah, like that. Perfect. So different skin complexion with 8K detail without. So if we make a fair render comparison later, you'll be able to see this. I might go and do a split like that so you can see the difference. And I might also go and include Victoria 9 in this. And we will go and get rid of this jowly bit here. Maybe that's something we should do. Where do you think that is, Linus? You brought it to our attention. Where do you think that is? Is that in the neck area? Probably is, isn't it? GPU agnostic and M1 optimized would be fantastic, wouldn't it? Wouldn't it just? Wouldn't it just? I hear you, buddy. Oh, Linus, that is really nice to hear. So nice. Discoloring that older folks have. Do you know, I don't think there is, Kiwi, and thank you for clarifying that. So the male and female come with these 4 types of skin shades just out of the base package for free, and the micronormals detail also comes in it, the 8K detail map also for free in the base package, but then there'll be other characters available with other skin tones and other skin complexions. I think, from what I understand, the high-res normal details map will also work on other characters, so character creators don't have to supply their own. They can just either reference the one that does give us, or you can just add it from the base package if you wanted to see that, or if you wanted to play with the values or something. You can do that. You can do that. Yeah, so it's probably a PA thing, I would imagine as well. Plasma. Did I leave anything out? I might just go quickly stop the render here. Stop. Continue in a second. Just get rid of the jowly thing. Actually, no, we're going to have to, if we're getting rid of the jowly thing, we need to go and just see if we can do that. Linus, where do you think this is? Is this in the neck area? And I'll also make a shot from here, so I'll make a full body shot as well, so we can see our character from all angles here. Let's see, under actor, I suppose. Anything about neck? What we got there? Neck mass, proportion length. Is it taper? It might not be the neck. What we got, this is another thing I wanted to show you. You can go to currently used if you've forgotten what is currently active on your character. And then this is anything that you dial the value in that isn't 0. So I can probably figure out what it was. It's not the teeth. It's the nose. Probably not that. Mass neck. It was not that. Taper neck, I don't think that was it either. Navel is probably unrelated. I look out left and right, that's unrelated as well. The nipples get done, Changeling Shit. Nipples and other HD details like the belly button, by the way, just in case you're wondering, those are all done with HD morphs. It's another big important change. So if you look at the topology of the figure, you'll see that it's all just base quads here, and especially around the breasts. Can I do this here like wire shade? Yes, I can. If I go and take off your top, there we go. You can see that there's really no room for nipple type geometry in the figure, but this is the same for the navel, yet we do see a navel here. And the the magic behind this is HD Morphs. And with HD Morphs, you can have a much more even topology that doesn't influence other parts of the body and still get as much detail in it as you need. So that's how that's done. And there are nipple morphs and breast adjustment morphs in here as well. So as soon as you get your hands on the figure, you can play as much as you like. Just thought I'd show that. Yeah, so that is that's the magic behind many of the additional details there. Oh, is it the older face at 150? That could be. That could be. Where is it? Yes, maybe I've overdone it on the face here. The 150. That could well be it. Yes, well spotted. Yes, see? Magicness. Isn't that cool? Now we have a younger version of the same woman, just with one slider. Isn't that insane? That's insane. This is what she used to look like back in the day, when she was but a young fairy. And we gave her that jowly chin at 150. Yeah, we shouldn't have done that. Thank you, Changeling Chick. Absolutely. If we do that at 100, then she has that tendency, but it's not all that annoying. So, yeah, so 100. Let's do that. Let's do that. Yes, that is correct. Indeed, yes. That is the only... If you ever wanted to create your own HD detail, you're going to have to become a DAZ PA. And if you are thinking of becoming one, there is at the bottom of the page, there is a link that you can follow, and that lets you send over some renders and ideas for products. You don't have to send the product, but send very, very good looking renders of your product to DAZ, and they will consider you into, welcoming you into the club. DAZ are always looking for great new talent, and if you are one of those talented people, then please get in touch with DAZ and don't hide your talent. And then you can get access to the HD Morph detail, as well as many, many other benefits. I think I have talked about pretty much everything. We've done this for, can you believe it? It's nearly 2.5 hours. Isn't that crazy? Absolutely amazing. I'm going to go run DFOS on this. I'm going to go and render out your 4 different versions. And hey, this was so much fun. We should do this again with a male character and have exactly the same thing. Maybe we can do this on a Twitch session sometime in the afternoon. I'd love to do that. My friends, thank you so much for dropping by. If you do have any questions, I'm going to leave the chat open for a while. Do leave them in there. I'll be around for another few minutes and we'll go and grab the questions out. Maybe I can make videos out of anything that interests you, and we're gonna get your burning questions answered. Currently there's no set date as far as I know for Genesis 9, but it will be with you very, very soon. Mid to late October is what I've been hearing, and it is already kind of mid-October next week, so maybe a week after that, maybe a week after that. Watch out for those DAZ emails, and I'm sure they're going to let you know. Have a wonderful rest of Saturday. I'll see you next month for another exciting stream on the DAZ YouTube channel. I'm also going to see you in about 2 weeks in the DAZ Plus stream. If you're not a DAZ Plus subscriber, consider becoming one. You get 2 exciting discount codes a month for DAZ Originals as well as PA products. You get a flat rate 30% discount off all the DAZ Originals, which is really, really cool. You get a ton of other benefits, including an additional live stream with me in about 2 weeks. So my friends, have a wonderful rest of the day, and I will see you very soon. Also, pre-order Victoria 9.